Hi, everyone. Welcome to the App Matters podcast presented by the Outer Loop Theater Experience, where we make art that matters. I'm Michael Herman. I'm the founder and artistic director of the Outer Loop. And on this podcast, on the App Matters podcast, we create a space to explore the question, what are we all here to do?
Correct.
Right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's what
cool.
we're doing
And
here.
who are you?
Aha. Who am I? Good question. I am Rachael Yoder, and I am the other artistic director of the Outer Loop Theater Experience. And fortunately, we have someone else on this call as
We do.
well. Who is that?
Who's that?
Hi, I'm Melissa Wilson. I'm the marketing director and Inter-Enso facilitator for the Outer Loop. And today I'm the producer for this podcast episode.
The only way this podcast even exists or is happening is because of Melissa.
100%.
1,000,000%.
Yes.
Cool.
I do what I can.
Sweet. So
It's
we're
a
all
lot.
here. It is a lot. So we're all here, and we're all always here, regardless of who you see and who you don't. We'll all always be here together. And the way we like to start our podcast episodes is with a little transition, a little game, a little exercise. We do this in theater, in rehearsals as well. In the process, we like to do something that bridges the gap or transitions us from where we all came from to now being in this shared space together. And we do lots of different warm-ups and games in rehearsal in a theater space. And here we're going to do something a little similar. We're going to do a little game as a transition because we all came from different places and we want to get our shared brain space together happening. So for this episode, we're gonna play a game called 5 Things. And
How's that game work?
Yeah, so how it generally works when we do it. So in theater, this is an improv game, and someone's gonna just kind of, without the other person knowing, say, "Give me 5 things that blah," and fill in the blank, right? And the other person has to just, without thinking, just the 5 things that come to their mind really quickly, no judgment, no double thinking it, just there's nothing, you can be imperfect, it doesn't have to be there's no right answers, just whatever comes to mind, 5 things that satisfy that category. How that would normally work in like other situations is it would kind of just, or in like improv, it would just be like something fun and silly, like 5 things that you don't want to say on a first date or something like that. Here we're gonna keep it kind of fun still, but we're gonna try to tie it somewhat to theater and the Outer Loop and the work that we do and Humanity Project, and
Or the episode we have
coming up. Yeah. So that being said, do you want me? Should I throw it to you first? Should I do the 5 things to you first?
You can. I'm nervous.
Okay, cool. So 5 things that every theater company should know not to do when producing a show.
5 things that every theater company should know not to do when producing a show.
Yes.
Okay. Produce something without a clear why. Just because we think this will sell. That's not a good enough reason.
Good.
Number 2 is have a 2 a.m. start time.
Great.
To not produce something really boring.
Cool. 2 more. Without thinking.
I'm trying not to think, but I have to think a little bit to get an idea. They should know not to produce something irrelevant. And they should know not to produce something that somebody else is also producing at the same time in the same city.
Great. Yeah, those are all
Those are all 5 things
definitely things you don't want to do.
that you don't want to do.
Cool.
Is it my turn?
It is.
Okay. All right. 5 plays that you never want to see again.
That's too easy. Only 5. Well, it's funny because the first one. You
I
could bet $1
do.
million
I
safely
could.
on what the first one's going to be.
I
I know
can.
you can, yeah,
Yeah,
because it's widely known about me.
it is.
So should I say that one first?
Yeah, now the audience
Okay.
has to know.
Yeah.
Michael
If
Herman's least favorite show
of all time, like
of
what
all
was the
time.
question? It was like 5 plays you
5
never want
plays
to
you
see
never want to
again.
see again. Yeah.
The Music Man.
Yep.
Um, uh, The Music Man.
I feel like there should be a whole episode on why that is. Why do you
Yeah.
not like the
So my
Music Man?
first 2 are The Music Man. If you just noticed, I said The Music Man and The
And
Music
then the
Man.
Music Man? Great.
Yeah. What was the name of that show? That we just saw? Uh,
Love Song?
Love Song.
Don't want to
Never
see
want to
that.
see that again. Um. Oh. Really? I'm gonna put all these into one if it's okay, and it's really gonna bother you a lot, but I'm gonna do it anyway.
Uh-oh.
You know, Chekhov.
Yo!
I know. I knew that was gonna be a problem.
Shut up, Michael! Get off this podcast right now.
Oh no.
We have to end the episode there.
All right. Sorry, everyone. This is where this week's episode ends.
Ouch! That hurts
And
my soul.
yeah.
I'm sure.
And yeah, sorry. And a fifth one a play that I never want to see again. I don't have to see Annie again ever either.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
fair. You
Cool.
had enough of that
Yeah,
one.
I've had enough of Annie. Some other people haven't, but I have.
Well, I wasn't
Cool.
anticipating that game to get so like Knives Out, but
Yeah, that was pretty Knives Out. That's it. Chekhov really upset a lot of people.
yes.
Yeah.
It's you know what? Actually, I think that's a good way to start this episode because
cool.
that's like a good intro
Yes.
to who you
To
are.
who I am.
Yeah, which is what we want to talk about today. So we do want to make a space for the conversation about exploring purpose and what you feel your purpose is, what you feel you're here to do. And we're going to do that by exploring that personally. We're exploring that as a company. And we're also going to invite guests on to kind of talk through what they feel that they're here to do and their kind of purpose for their artistry and also for their lives. And Michael mentioned in our first episode, and it's just something that I know about him from having witnessed at least the last 14, 15 years of his life journey, is just that it's taken a very long time to find yours. Is that correct to say?
Yes.
Yeah. So we wanted to spend this episode just kind of talking through just your life experience and what kind of the path that you've traveled and what brought you from that place of not knowing what is my purpose, what am I here to do, and the journey to finding it.
How long is this episode? You guys,
we're going to try
a 6-part, 18-hour mini docuseries.
We're going to try to keep it zippy. But
okay,
sure. I know it's quite the journey. But something that I think is just from where we just came from with, the whole Chekhov bit, kind of joking and not joking. But is it fair to say about you that you're fairly polarizing as an individual?
I think it's not only fair to say, but I think you'd have a hard time finding people who would disagree with that. Yeah, I'm quite polarizing. I think we've often said, Michael Herman, if you mention the name Michael Herman, you find people either will be like, you either get people say, oh man, I love him, he's the best. Or you get people who say, let's try to keep the language clean, right, for the podcast. You'll get people, you're likely to get people saying, don't mention that name around me, hate him, just don't want to work with him again. Just like, you're rarely going to get someone who's like, he's all right. I don't think you're ever going to get anyone that's going to tell you.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say that.
No one's ever said Michael Herman's okay. Love him or hate him. That's it. And I'm fine with that. That's my life. Yeah.
Let's talk about your life. Where are you from? Where would you say you're from? Oof. It's a tough one. It's a tough place to start?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in New York State, and I grew up, I would say, in two geographical places equally, in New York and in Florida, in the South Florida area. Back and forth over the years. My younger years, very younger years, childhood years in New York. Teens and in Florida, and then back and forth between New York and Florida for like my 20s and 30s mostly. So that's like where I'm from in terms of like where was I born and where did I grow up and live, and the geographical locations that shaped uh, who I am. Yeah,
Would you say that one shaped you more than another in terms of like your childhood years?
one location.
Yeah.
Probably Florida because I was a little older and school growing up, like school and friends seem like more memories are there about that than early New York years. So yeah, I'd say like the Fort Lauderdale, Miami, kind of southern Florida area.
Nice. And
Yeah.
so you kind of do born in New York, Florida for, high school area. And then coming out of high school, what did you do? Where did you go from there?
So coming out of high school in Florida, I wind up um, my first college experience out of high school was a school that some will know and probably most will not, called Cooper Union, which is in New York City. And Cooper Union is actually one of the top schools in the world for architecture, art, and engineering, and is one of the most difficult schools to get into, and is a very, very like prestigious uh, program and school to go into. But the flip side of that is that going into Cooper Union out of high school is like is like skipping the undergrad experience and going directly into grad school at 18. So
Yeah.
that's challenging. Yeah,
Yeah.
for
And I
some.
think it's important for context here. Can you I'm not even sure exactly how to ask this question, but can you describe like the typical 18-year-old student who applies for and gets into Cooper Union and who that person is, and
Mm.
then who you were as
Yeah.
an 18-year-old going into Cooper Union?
Yeah, I hear what you're asking there. The typical 18-year-old applying to Cooper Union in architecture, which is what I did, is someone who, for probably their entire high school career, has been doing architecture in some way, has been drawing, has been thinking about being an architect, has been drafting things, has been taking architecture and design classes in high school, has been probably trying to work in an architecture firm outside of high school to prepare. And if you're going to apply to Cooper Union, you've done all of that. Likely that's the typical person applying who's like, I'm going to be an architect, I've always wanted to be an architect, this is what's going to happen, I'm going to go to Cooper Union, the best school in the world for it, and that's all I think about all the time is being an architect. That's the typical student,
Yeah, and who are
18.
you?
Not that person. um, I was, especially in high school, I guess a way to put it politely is not very focused. Um, and yeah, kind of all over the place, and didn't really have any real focus at all on anything other than like just living my life every day and like taking it like as it came with no actual direction or focus. So when time came to apply to schools, and you get those questions from the teachers or guidance counselors or whoever, like, well, what do you want to, how do we start figuring out what schools, what do you want to do? And those questions were met from me with like, I don't know, I never thought about it. And the follow-up questions were like, well, what are you good at, what do you do? And I was like, well, I mean, I like to draw, and I was good at drawing, and I was always loved art class, and loved my art teacher at the time, and like was like, but I also was like, she focused me a little bit on like, oh, well, you do like to, it's not just art, you're kind of like more of an architecture guy. You're like you're looking at things in that way. How do I design things that, other people can use? So it kind of just was like, I guess I'm gonna try to go to study architecture. Like, sure.
Hmm.
And then, okay, so what schools for that? And then, through with my art teacher at the time, we whittled it down to, like, here's like probably 5 schools you should apply to for architecture. Not knowing at the time myself what Cooper Union really was and how big of a deal it was. Like, I had no concept. She
So
just
you
thought,
didn't know
I had no idea. She
the
was just like,
reputation or any of
no,
it.
not at all. She just decided on her own that like the 5 schools I'm going to apply to, that's going to be one of them. And then, fast forward, I get accepted, and I don't know even at the time if I knew even then. I had a better sense because I learned about the school and I understood through the application process and everything a little bit more, but I still don't think I understood the full kind of picture about what Cooper Union really was.
Did you feel when did it like kind of dawn on you? Was it when you got there, when you started class? Like when did you start to realize what where you were actually?
Yeah, so I get accepted. I wind up going and I go to New York City. I get an apartment. I start going to Cooper Union. And I think almost immediately when everyone gets into the studio together the first years and you're talking, everyone's talking about being there, and people are talking about things that like architecture stuff that I have like no idea what anybody's even talking about. Like, I don't even blueprints and like scale and like I don't even understand what is going on. Like, I came here to learn, not to already know. Like, and it seems like everybody already knows. So that was shocking. And then I think the thing that really was a little shocking was we got our home tests back. That so like when you apply to certain like design programs, you have to do like a portfolio as part of your application. And Cooper Unions was they sent you these series of prompts, and then you had to respond artistically in some way. So I did drawings, and I got mine back, and everyone else got theirs back, and everyone was sharing. We all got in, so everyone was sharing them, thinking, "Oh, they probably all pretty similar." Oh boy. So everyone else's were like these, like what you think of when I say architectural plans and drawings. It's like what everyone thinks of. That's what everyone's was. Like these like blueprint looking, unroll the thing, buildings with lines, and like what
Yeah.
everybody's picturing right now. That's what everyone took out.
What were yours?
Uh, Mine were like these little, like one, like on a drawing pad, little sketches, like pencil sketches,
Of what?
like what do you mean of like I don't remember the prompts exactly. So I
Oh,
think
okay.
some of the answers are going to be a little out of context, but like I mean some things I can remember. Like I think one of the questions was, you know, visually represent your interpretation of a window,
Mm.
right? And people had these like blueprint drawing with like actual things you could see were like windows, like this, and I had like this pencil drawing of a wall with like a cracked hole in it that you could see through the hole from inside to outside. And what you could see outside off in the distance was like earth. And it was like a pencil drawing. And then the only other one I can remember right now is it was something about visually represent like utilitarian objects. And, again, people had like these technical drawings of like on like computers that drawn by computers programs that had like all these little technical specifications and very like machinery looking things and everything. And I had like forks holding french fries that were floating up into space from the plate that they were on, and like a spoon trying to, the little strawberry fell out of the spoon and was like flying into the air. And like, I was the only one who
Who had
had those, and everyone else had like the, yeah. So that, I think that is when I realized this is not Kansas anymore. We're not in Kansas.
So how, given that, I mean, you got in,
I did get in.
um, how was, but it seems like everyone else was in a very different mindset, a very different intention behind why they were there.
Yeah.
How did that kind of play itself out? How did you feel there, and how did that go?
It didn't go well. There was, I felt very, like an outsider, or like, isolated, because everyone seemed to be on a similar page, and I was not on that page, except for there was this one professor who's a pretty famous, very famous actually, architect, who's now who died over the last several years, uh, Lebbeus Woods. And he was the only one. He's very eccentric. If anyone knows of him or looks him up, you'll find he's an incredibly eccentric person, and also was kind of looked at in the architecture world as kind of a somewhat of a like a rebel, and a kind of an outsider, and a visionary, but many people thought of him as kind of like a wacko a little bit. He, coincidentally enough, like, he loved me, and like I loved him, and like I felt very much like I was supposed to be there when he was around. He also kind of gave me a harder time than other people, but I would later come to understand why that is. But yeah, I think for the most part I felt really like this wasn't a place that I was supposed to be,
Mm.
and then I only really lasted there. After a year, I decided I didn't want to be there anymore. But to be fair, because it was such a great school, and I was told by many people that it's not an opportunity that you give up, I gave it another semester to try, and I was so unhappy, and I just felt like this isn't for me right now in my life. This isn't where I'm supposed to be, and so I left after a year and a half, which is
Mm.
something that not many people do. You don't leave Cooper Union after you get in there. It would be
So
like
what?
leaving, for people who don't know Cooper Union, it would be like saying you're leaving Yale, or you're leaving Harvard, or you're leaving MIT. Like, you just don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was um correct me if I'm wrong, but you didn't have to pay tuition, is that
At
correct?
that time, yeah, I don't know if
Because
it's
of the
still the same,
endowment.
but there was an endowment from when the school was founded, that one of the things was that because it was such a low acceptance rate and they didn't take a lot of people and so competitive, if you did get in, it was a full ride. It was automatic full ride. So you're not only giving up the prestige of the program, but you're giving up a fully paid education.
Then what did you do?
Uh,
What happened after that?
Actually, that made me think at that time that not only was that school not for me, but that school wasn't for me at all.
Mm.
And that maybe it's for other people, but for me, school was not a thing.
Hmm.
So I decided that the nightlife, restaurant, hotel, hospitality business was for me, because I had grown up in it, working through high school. I had worked in restaurants. So I was like, I know that's comfortable.
Mm.
I can get a job doing that, and maybe I can work my way up in that, and that's what I'll do. So yeah, I went into the bar business in New York for a while, and worked my way up there, and transitioned into restaurants. And actually, over the years in New York, did work my way up pretty, for someone starting where I started, worked my way up to a pretty decent job and a pretty decent living, and like was doing all right, but living that kind of New York, like, hospitality business, nightlife kind of life for like my 20s.
So I know what that is. I know what the New York hospitality nightlife business life is, but
Yeah.
uh and I imagine many of our listeners do as well, but how did that how did that shape you? Did you enjoy the hospitality business? How did that sort of shape your worldview, and how did that feel like your purpose, and how did
Mm.
that sort of feel to be living that lifestyle at that time?
Yeah, I, you know, that's a difficult question to answer because I don't even think at that age and given my, you know, point of view on life at that point, I don't even think I could tell you, like, if you were to go back and ask me then, like, what's your purpose? I wouldn't even know what you mean. You know
Mm,
what I mean? Like, who I was at that time, I wouldn't even understand the question.
yeah.
I honestly, I don't think I would even understand what you meant by that. I was really, for a long time, especially at that time in my life, I really lived seriously, like, I know this is like a thing that people say, but I really was just living every day in the moment, never thinking about the future, never thinking long term, never considering, like, what am I going to do with this next week, next month, next year. I was really just living every day. And I was having, I think, a blast at the time. I was young. I was making a ton of money. I had a great position. And that money that great money that I was making allowed me to live a really kind of extravagant, but also like dangerous, I think, lifestyle that I think added to the fog of not knowing what I was going to do beyond
Mm,
those days, if that makes sense.
it does make sense. Would you say that, I know this is kind of a tricky question to answer. Like, would you say that you were happy?
I think as far as I understood happiness, then I think I would say yes. I would say I thought I was,
Yeah.
because I didn't quite, I don't think I understand life and meaning and purpose and happiness the way I do now. But
Hmm.
I think looking back is, I think that person believed he was happy. Yeah.
I agree with that, and I wonder. Obviously, I wasn't there, but do you think that maybe people who knew you um, would have said
Hmm.
that's a happy person, or that's someone who wants us to believe that he's happy?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it hits me really hard that it's the second thing that it's. I think I perceived myself to be happy, but looking back now and looking back at the behavior and looking back at being able to really understand what was going on then, I definitely think everyone else would say that, yeah, that someone pretending to be or projecting they are, but is not even close. Yeah.
Maybe has all the outside trappings of this looks like what
Y-
happiness should look like. I get to do
Yeah.
whatever I want, be wherever I want, and
Yeah.
live the way I want. I'm free.
Yes.
But I mean, I have insider intel, but I mean, can you speak to maybe just the sort of state of mind, or I guess like underlying anger that I think maybe comes with not knowing your purpose?
Hmm.
Does any of that feeling kind of resonate?
Yeah, I think again, you don't realize it at the time, but you are acting in ways and behaving in ways that are incredibly self-destructive. And whether that's like um in relationships and just not respecting people in relationships, thinking only of yourself, um, whether that's, disrespecting your work situation and your employers and other people you work with, and really just only caring about yourself, um, or whether it's like really self-destructive behavior, like, working a 16-hour day and then like going out to a club till sunrise, and then doing it multiple times a week, and then doing it for multiple weeks a month, and then doing it for multiple months a year, and then doing it for 8 years. And then looking back, 8 years later and going, what just happened? Like, what just happened? I think there was just a lot of self-destructive behavior that maybe seemed, some of that, like the partying and the lifestyle can seem to people like that's happy and fun and whatever, but it's really the opposite, because if it's searching for it, it's not feeling it. It's trying to get it, trying to
Mm-hmm.
find it. And I think when you're trying to find it and you can't find it, you keep trying harder and harder to find it. So you keep going after, the behavior gets a little more extreme and a little more dangerous, and then it's years and years of that, and it just becomes your life, this quest to, like, what you believe is maintain happiness, I think, but is really trying to find it.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me to some really dangerous, dark places over the years. And then eventually I really had to get out of New York if I wanted to live, because I felt like it was getting pretty dangerous.
Yeah, let's talk about that though. So you're in New York and you're and you're doing that, you're living that lifestyle. And you sort of come to the realization that I got to get out of here, or this isn't good for me. I've come to an awareness that I'm not
Yeah.
headed for anything good. So then where did you go?
Sorry to interrupt you, Michael, and sorry to interrupt your listening, but as will probably come as no surprise to anyone who knows us, this episode ran a little long. It turns out you can't fit Michael's entire life story into one concise episode, so we are going to split this conversation into two. So this will be episode 2, and if you can listen to the rest of our conversation, that will be episode 3, and that episode will be dropping next week. So until then, please follow us on all of our social media, and also remember to subscribe on both Spotify and YouTube. And between now and then, think about what you're here to do. And we will see you next Thursday. Thank you for listening.